War. What is it good for? Well, some things, actually. Like shearing off the generational excess of violent young men who want to have their valiant power fantasy, or instilling a sense of national and tribal cohesion by participating in a distilled, refined version of man's primal state, conflict. Today's story has none of those things, barring the power fantasy. This is Africa in the Cold War, boy. This is some goofy stuff. So let's have a look at probably one of the most mental mercenaries to have ever lived. Anguiphian, the wild goose, Mad Mike Hoare. Please leave a like and a comment on this video because it really helps me in the algorithm. But before we get started, it is in fact your boy, Raid Shadow Legends. Raid Shadow Legends is the premier mobile gaming experience bringing console level quality to your phone. With over 800 champions and millions of strategies, they are inviting you to their 5th birthday party, and with over 5 million monthly players, this is going to be a big one. For Raid's anniversary, players can get $100 worth of free rewards, including the Epic Champion Lady Etessa, 500,000 silver, 5 XP boosters, 5 energy refills, and 5 rank up chickens. And once players hit level 25, they will get an additional 500,000 silver, 5 more energy refills, 5 magic potions, 5 epic skill tomes, and 25 arcane potions. But that's not all, because if you click the link in the description and use the promo code FESTIVAL5, you can get the Epic Champion Tyrell alongside even more bonuses. But don't go thinking that it's just about the goodie bags, as the birthday boy also has a swathe of brand new features for you to explore with those new champions. For example, the live arena, where you can show off your high IQ in a 4v4 player versus player deathmatch, play to see if you can become the scourge of the arena. The Cursed City, where once a month you work to defeat Amius the Lunar Archon, and along the way you clear stages to earn valuable loot and rewards, including a free mythical champion. What are mythical champions? Well, mythical champions are heroes that have the ability to metamorph into powerful and cool looking forms, bringing a versatile and tactical edge to the battlefield. Trust me when I say that this is just the tip of the iceberg. With new content constantly being added, now is a better time than ever to jump into the fray. And you can come and join me and my clan in celebrating the birthday boy's 5 years of fun. Just look up Count Dankula TV in game and just hit my link down in the description and I will see you on the battlefield. Our whimsical little yarn sadly begins in Calcutta, India. On St. Patrick's Day of 1919, baby Mike entered the world, under the name of Thomas Michael Hoare, born to parents Thomas and Aileen Hoare. The family can tragically be traced to Rush, Dublin. What a shame. Thomas, Michael's father, was a master mariner turned boatman on the Hoare River, which is a rather dangerous job. Mike's early life was surprisingly normal. His time in India was fleeting, as he sadly had to go to England to be educated at the Margate College in Kent. After his tenure at school, he decided to pick a career path, beginning his training in one of the dullest fields known to man, accountancy. But Mike was rather inspired by one of his teachers, a former sergeant by the name of Badcock. Yes, that was his name. Who, having served in the Boer Wars and telling stories about it, had seemingly left Michael with a longing for duty, adventure, and most notably, a borderline autistic hyperfixation on Africa. So, in 1939, after a brief job as a writer for an accountancy firm, calamity struck. War broke out. The big one that all of the Hyperborea edits are about. So Mike decided to enlist. After failing to join Sandhurst and become a Rupert, he ended up joining the London Irish Rifles, a reserve regiment, as an enlisted man, spending half of the war in the Small Arms School in Hythe. So by the time he took another shot at an officer's commission, this time via the Officer Cadet Training Unit in Droitwich, Mike was already a cut above the rest, being an expert marksman, natural teacher, and an experienced leader. It was here that he learned how to be a Sergeant Hartman, but with more pomp and less piles. And it seemed that he had succeeded. Though it is interesting to note that his war report detailed that he was a forceful and aggressive type. It seems the COs were afraid that Mike would end up scaring the hose. The hose in this case being the conscripts. With no time wasted, Mike was transferred to Glasgow. His unit were unironically given pith helmets from the 1910s. They were loaded onto a ship and departed. What is a pith helmet? Well, this is a pith helmet. Don't acknowledge the dent, we're a serious office. Their destination, unknown. But in April of 1942, when the boat went down the Atlantic and ended up stationed in Cape Town, South Africa, Big Badcock stories rang through Mike's ears. It was love at first sight. Then Mike got pulled out and he ended up redeployed back to India. I have this sudden urge to just grab my Martini Henry and just woo! By October of 1943, Mike had been promoted to lieutenant and had joined the 2nd Reconnaissance Regiment of the Royal Armoured Corps. This is important to note as he's now in an active unit, not a reservist anymore. So he's actually going to do something and not twiddle his thumbs whilst the largest war in human history is waged. Happy days. So what was his assigned task? To trial Lend-Leased vehicles like the American LVT-1 and to partake in the Arakan campaign in Burma. Now, I don't know how much you know about World War II, but that was a campaign that you did not want to be a part of. Mike's gallivanting across the Imperial Jewel culminated in his part in the Battle of Kohima in March of 1944. The Battle of Kohima, lovingly referred to as the Stalingrad of the East by those unfortunate enough to survive it, is not necessarily remembered for its scale of casualties, but for its brutality and decisiveness in the wider Burma campaign. To the point that from that battle onwards, the Japs were permanently on the back foot, getting blitzed and chin-ditzed out of the colonies. So of course, our Mike was there, being called in to assist the battered and beleaguered regulars who had gotten a wee bit tired sitting in a 3-foot trench in a 40°C jungle, getting shot at by palm trees speaking Menu. Despite this, Mike had actually seen a lot less action than you may expect. He actually spent quite a bit of time in the regional HQ in New Delhi. It's most likely here that he picked up the required skills to organise and lead large-scale operations and manage an army. Skills that would come in very handy later on. Of course, that's not all that happened in New Delhi. Mike also did the time-honoured Rupert tradition of going to dance parties and tennis matches during wartime. For hearts and minds, of course. To which he just so happened to meet a woman called Elizabeth Stott, or Betty for short, the daughter of British colonial officials based in the city. So naturally, as they were both Britons that grew up in the Raj, they got along quite well. And because I mentioned her, she has to be important, obviously, so they ended up marrying in 1945. With the war's end, Mike was demobilised in 1946, having climbed up to the rank of Major and having helped put down multiple flash mobs in Limpura, which were spurred up by some guy called Gandhi. I don't know, he seems cringing unimportant. And Mike might actually have met Gandhi, by the way, but we couldn't confirm that for a fact. For most, the end of your service in World War II would be the return to normalcy and tedium, a high point in the lives of most. But for Mike, this was merely the prologue. Obviously, I mean, you've seen the length of this video. Mike ended up emigrating to Durban, South Africa, with his wife in tow. After trying his hand at accountancy and realising that he's not a nerd and engines are cooler, he ended up establishing a small yet quite successful motor company. He had his share of hobbies like invoking his inner Cecil Rhodes and taking a bike ride from Cape Town to Cairo, which is about 4,486 miles. 80% of which wouldn't have even had a dirt path, let alone roads. I thought going for a big bike ride like that was to be a pleasant experience, but what the fuck do I know? He ended up liking the little getaway so much that he did it again. This time from Mombasa, Kenya to Lobito, Angola. A measly 1,870 miles. This is to say, Mike became intimately familiar with Africa, having literally gone from tip to tip. During this time, he explored the continent off the saddle, routinely enjoying hikes throughout the Drakensberg Mountains and Basuto land, which is now Lesotho, the wee circle in the middle of South Africa, studying things like tribal cave paintings as though he was in modern London. Apparently, he also tried to find the Kalahari Lost City, a supposed archaeological site first documented by Canadian funambulist and potential mad lad William Leonard Hunt in 1885. He never found it, so rare Michael. What we can say he got from his Kalahari bonanza was the entrepreneurial spark that he needed to start hosting safaris. After leading a safari in the Okavango Delta in 1959, he apparently went searching for a mysterious ape in Nyasaland, which is now called Malawi. That was most likely a search for the Bondo mystery apes, though I can't say for certain what monkey business he was up to there, because Bondos are usually spotted way further north than where Mike was exploring. On one of the safaris, Mike met a man claiming to be the American vice consulate to Durban. Spoiler alert, he was not, and a lot of you have already guessed where this is going, but regardless, Mike and this man struck up a friendship. This man's name was Don Rickard, and of fucking CIA again! CIA again, every video, every single time, every mad lad, right? CIA. Oh, did a bunch of awful stuff happen? CIA. Oh, did a country get destabilised? CIA. Oh, did a fucking mad lad get absolutely brain spooked into doing a bunch of terrible things? CIA. Every single time. I am sick of the CIA popping up in every single video. It was Don who explained to Mike the current happenings up north regarding some place called the Congo. Apparently, it was ran by some made-up people called Belgians. But after gaining their independence from this imaginary country, they immediately broke down into a battle royale of tribal, ethnic and religious groups, which was only made even more complicated because it was the fucking Cold War, so of course the Yanks and the Russians were knee-deep in it. And, to add insult to injury, the UN was involved because they wanted to show off that they were a super-ethereal entity, and in true UN fashion, they somehow managed to simultaneously do absolutely fucking nothing, yet somehow still make things worse. Simplifying this entire shit show is near impossible, because again, this is Cold War Africa. This shit is absolutely nutty and complex. But basically, UN-mandated decolonisation leads to this Belgian place pulling out of the Congo far too quickly. The West decides that the fledgling Congo government absolutely reeks of Marxism, and as such the Congo goes to the Soviets for support. And the UN was just kind of there, I guess. It was very stinky. That's why the southern province of Katanga, a mineral-rich region in the south of the country, led by one Moise Tshombe, just decided to secede alongside the province of South Kasai because the government there also reeked of Marxism. After all, who wouldn't want to just try and sit out this jolly jungle jive? The Congolese government, that's who. Now, Mike was no fan of the Reds. But with communism seemingly on the march in the heart of darkness, he couldn't simply stand by and have Ivan trample all over his new homeland. He wouldn't have his children growing up speaking Russian, which is an actual quote of his. So, utilising his connections with the local volunteer recruiters in Durban, Don the Spook was able to get Mike a ticket to Katanga. So Mike decided to go north to stop the red tide dead in its tracks and contain it. And as such, Mike volunteered to fight for Katanga. But it turns out Katanga was a complete farce. After taking command of the recently organised 4 Commando, which was made up of World War II vets, a few blokes from the Rhodesian Light Infantry, and some Israelis, Mike's unit got immediately smashed in an engagement by the UN. Evidently not used to the nature of irregular warfare in the jungle and having piss-poor logistics, a theme that is going to crop up very often, Mike's unit was, as a result, absolutely mogged by a UN contingent of Malaysians. Despite the embarrassment of losing to the Bluebells, this was actually a net positive experience for Mike, who gained connections within mercenary circles and, more importantly, experience. After all, fighting in the jungle is not clean or proper. It's very, very messy. And as a side note, Katanga is where the famous Siege of Jadotville took place. It's a semi-common misconception that Mike actually fought against the McSquaddies there, but I've found nothing to actually support that. And for whatever reason, Mike remarried a woman named Phyllis Sims. Apparently, she was an airline stewardess. It was by this point that Mike had actually acquired a taste for the mercenary lifestyle. And as such, in 1964, when the communist Simba insurgency was ravaging the Congo's east, Mike was all too eager to volunteer again. This time for the Congo's government. They, of course, took Mike on without even a second thought, being championed by our old friend from Katanga, Moise Tshombe, who is actually in the Congolese government now after trying to secede from them. African politics in the 1900s is very, very messy. And a lot of it doesn't make sense. The UN then stamped out Katanga, Tshombe fucked off to northern Rhodesia, which is now Zambia, unfortunately, and he also took 890 suitcases full of gold bars with him. He had actually robbed the National Vault so thoroughly that when they finally went in to check it, there was apparently nothing left but a £10 note and a dead rat. He also corresponded with some fella called Mobutu about the CQ, the communist question, which we will get into in a bit. Tshombe was very eager to have Mike back on his team, as frankly he didn't trust the Congolese government for events that, as you will see, made him a bit uneasy being in the cabinet. Plus, frankly, even Tshombe admitted that the Congolese military are so inept that they needed white mercenaries to deal with the Simbas. In July of 1964, after getting off the plane in Ndjili Airport in Leopoldville, what greeted Mike was tragic. He gazed upon the high European architecture of Leopoldville constructed by these Belgian creatures falling into disrepair. Mike went on record comparing the buildings of the old colonial administration being treated by the Congolese the same way that we look at Roman architecture. A mixture of awe and mystery as to how they could have possibly built something like this and how arcane its design is. The Belgians only officially left about 4 years ago, by the way. I bring this up because not only is it just kind of funny, but it also showcases how ill-prepared large swathes of the Congo were for self-governance, or, quite frankly, the modern world. You had what could only be described as a civilizational car crash, but Mike really didn't bat too much of an eye at it. This is Africa, after all. Shit gets rather weird here. Besides, he has communists to kill. He was once more placed in command of a mercenary outfit, this time named 5 Commando. With Belgian and American funding, he had to get to work training and organising this rabble into a cohesive force actually capable of more than just the bare minimum. But first, he needed recruits. Mike went out of his way to work with recruiters and he put up newspaper ads all across South Africa and Rhodesia, rest in peace, asking for white men capable of marching 20 miles per day and who were fond of combat and were tremendous romantics to join 5 Commando. Taking into account the current geopolitical climate in Africa, paired with a much healthier average BMI compared to today, meant that there was no shortage of eager and willing recruits, with a 6-month contract of a minimum of $280 per month, or about $2,260 in today's money, totaling out to $13,560 for those 6 months, which is rather good money when all you had to do was go out in the jungle and shake the trees for communists like oranges in Animal Crossing. When Mike saw what was lined up before him, he probably had an aneurysm. Because despite the return of some of his comrades from Katanga, most of those standing before him were absolute specimens. He described them as, and I quote, alcoholics, drunks, booze artists, bums, and layabouts. Some of them were even junkies and gay, which Mike complained about non-stop, and he wasn't the only one complaining. Belgian Colonel Frederick van de Waal, who was coordinating with the Congolese military, went on record calling them pirates who are not worth anything in battle. This wasn't helped because the press in both the West and Soviet bloc picked up on this new unit, and they started portraying Mike as a mad hound. This is, after all, where the mad portion of Mad Mike comes from. Mike very often butted heads with the press. Relatable. They very often weirdly portrayed him as some sort of mercenary, a soldier of fortune whose morality can shift if the price is good enough. This was, of course, totally not the case. Mike and his merry men had principles. Mostly. Mike often went on record detailing his desire to make his men into the ideal Anglo-Saxon volunteer force, and himself as a romantic fighting in the jungle for martial glory. This is made very funny by the fact that Mike was 5'7", balding, and from Dublin. With Mad Mike's marauders assembled, they were given their regimental insignia and christened as the Wild Geese, named after the Irish mercenaries who pledged allegiance to the Jacobite cause. So, with 5 Commandos' introduction covered, let's focus on the opposition. The comrades of the Congo, the Simbas, and the Quilus. Their origin basically comes down to when some standard realpolitik with an African flair went down. Basically, when Congolese Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba got a fat L by President and notable not-communist Joseph Kasavubu and was subsequently ratioed by one familiar old boy known as Joseph Desiree Mobutu, later known as Mobutu Sese Seko Kuku Ingabendo Wazabanga, or just Mobutu for short. I feel like I just cast a fucking spell. Either way, after only 2 PMs being in power for like a month, it ended up with Mike's old friend Tshombe as the new PM. Probably to try and extend an olive branch to Katanga, who reintegrated after Lumumba was liquidated. Like I said, African politics, really fucking messy. This made Tshombe quite uneasy. If the popular Lumumba could get killed, what would stop Mobutu from putting his sights on a literally who that formerly fought the government? So what if he's the Prime Minister? That didn't help the other guys. As you would imagine, the supporters of Lumumba, who are of the proletarian persuasion, would be rather displeased with this, and they decided to scurry off into the eastern provinces and link up with their brethren who got exiled there like it's fucking Siberia. The man in charge of these jungle Jacobins was Christophe Gebenye, a trade unionist in Lumumba's old cabinet who was fired. There was already communist agitation out east before the Simbas came into being, mainly led by the ex-Minister of Education, Pierre Mulele, an avowed Maoist who got formally trained in Peking, and he had plenty of connections with the Red Menace on hand. This culminated in his own boogaloo in 1961, known as the Kwilu Rebellion, because it was in the province of Kwilu. These boys are rather interesting because before they got folded into the wider Simbas, they were rather fucking gnarly. Their jeunesse, or youths, were basically estranged teenagers that were Coney 2012 out into the east and instilled with good Maoist principles, and he was gunning for them to be honourable socialist heroes. Now, most of these youths were, well, youths and tribals that, to be quite honest, probably didn't even know how to read. But Mulele was smart, and he had at his disposal Africa's most powerful weapon. Witchcraft. Look, we're talking about an African conflict. Of course it was going to come up. Alongside drilling into the boys the tenets of internationalism and class struggle, he reinforced said beliefs with local superstition. That is, he had what could only be described as communist commissar witch doctors who cast spells and gave potions to the revolutionaries. One of these potions was called Dawa. Dawa was a magic potion cooked up to be given to the jeunesse before battle. It consisted of blessed water diluted with obscene amounts of marijuana, resulting in the teenagers becoming too baked to even feel fear. This, paired with the chant, My Mulele, was meant to result in bullets just passing through their bodies harmlessly, and to give them such high testosterone that they could incapacitate people just by staring them down with that Sigma gaze. All of this hokey-pokey shite would surely account to nothing, inflicting nothing but heavy casualties upon the jeunesse, right? Well, at first, yes, absolutely, but when those that survived getting mowed down and having their potions and spells not deflect the 7.62 ammunition, they asked the witch doctor why the spell or potion didn't protect them. And the excuse that the witch doctors gave was that they obviously didn't follow the ritual closely enough. This bolstered the spirits of the 12-year-old zoinked-out jeunesse to the point that they were quite literally just throwing themselves into machine gun fire fearlessly, thinking that the bullets would just bounce off them. This was such an obscene sight to behold that it actually started to work. It was putting the fear of God into the local government units, because when you have a bunch of smiling 12-year-olds willingly throwing themselves into the path of your machine gun fire, that can freak a man out. So the soldiers, thinking that these teenage animals were surely so brave because they actually did have magic powers. So basically, enough of them died with big smiles on their faces that the government soldiers thought, holy shit, they actually must be magic. As an aside, the idea of being able to bounce bullets off of your skin with the right spells and potions is actually pretty fucking common for Central and Western Africa. It's theorised that the reason for this belief is the fact that colonial policing units like the Force Publique in the Congo would very often mix blank rounds in with live rounds to further scare off crowds. Somehow. Though, if you don't know anything about the Force Publique, they don't really need to do much to scare people. All they have to say is rubber quota. If you know, you know. Anyways, the Kwilu burned so brightly that they eventually fizzled out, as the Congolese government actually did something, and as a result, the jeunesse that weren't arrested or given the Lenny treatment fled out further east, coalescing and merging with Lumumba's lost lackeys, the Simbas. Speaking of which, with that aside to this aside, the Simbas was actually a nickname given to a broader group out in the east of the DRC that were all vaguely left out, backed up by the Soviet bloc and given a Swahili name that means lion. Aye, it's the Lion King Simba. That's where the name comes from. Due to the drastically increased support from not only the Soviets, but from the Chinese, and as we will see soon, the Cubans, the Simbas were a much better organised, equipped and overall cohesive threat to the Congolese government, actually gaining territory and seceding from it in what would be a full-blown civil war in all but name, having its capital in Stanleyville. Rewinding back to July of 1964 with Mike's landing in N'Djamena Airport and the creation of 5 Commando, not even a week after forming, they were given their first operation. Operation Watch Chain, as it was called, consisted of 5 Commando sailing up Lake Tanganyika, raiding coastal villages, culminating in an attack on Albertville. They tried twice to try and dislodge the Simbas from existence, but due to shite logistics and near non-existent discipline within the ranks, both were repelled. And when I say that discipline was near non-existent, I mean that Mike ended up having to literally pistol whip a Belgian mutineer under his command during an operation. Because he was being a pussy. This caused a pause in deployments throughout the remainder of 1964, with 5 Commandos stationed in the Baskamina Air Base. Mike, in a presumed shit fit at his subordinate's sussy behaviour, started drilling and hazing his men into the dust, while the Congolese government twiddled their thumbs and tried to learn how roads work. Another bad start to Hoare's Mercenary campaign. Let's hope it's not a trend. Though they did get some small hints of action, securing airports and sweeping out the odd village in between being frog-marched to the point of vomiting because you didn't dust down your own boots well enough. By the time the unit was fully prepped for operations again, the Congolese government managed to quell a fair chunk of the rebellion. Though, to be quite honest, the fact that it's taken them this long says plenty. But the powers that be decided to double down, and overseas support for the Simbas increased as the war entered its second phase. As such, 5 Commando had been tasked with securing the eastern border of the DRC, mainly on the border of Burundi and down Lake Tanganyika, focusing on Uvira, Baraka and Fizi. Why? Well, this might come as a surprise to some of you, but unsecured borders are a very easy way to get undesirable actors and equipment into a country. It's almost like a country without borders is bound to be destabilised. Shocking, I know. Easing back into merc work, re-establishing communication lines, securing the Burundian border and stack-wiping Simba pockets, 5 Commando actually had a chance to get the ball rolling again. And what would be the Geese's finest hour came later with their instrumental action in Operation Dragon Rouge. November 24th, 1964 saw the rounding up of all Belgians and Americans in Simba-held Stanleyville. Because, you know, of course they would. Like, really, why are you, a white American, hanging around in the Maoist capital of the Wakandan Weed Wizards? I mean, I know the standards for journalists are a pale imitation of the olden days, but still, fucking hell. As for the Belgians, most of them were nuns, which is brave to say the least because communists want to exterminate religion. And witch doctors also hate nuns for being nuns. DBZ fusion all of that together, and well, you know, it's not good for the nuns. At 6:30 AM in Stanleyville, the order was given to execute all foreigners in the city. To which all of the Simbas absolutely obliged like the professionals they definitely were. Probably grabbing a stick or something because let's be frank, if the Congolese government themselves had logistics this shit, then so did the Simbas for sure. At 7 AM, the hostages were rounded up by presumed Jeunesse and marched out into the street. Of course, getting ordered around by a malnourished, snarling 14-year-old waving a rusted World War I carabiner isn't that authoritative, even if he was a 4-star general. So, as a result, around 50 hostages just decided to stay home, barricading themselves in, of course. As for the 250-odd good citizens that followed instructions, they were told to just sit down in the middle of the road, because, well, the Simbas really didn't plan that far ahead. And they paid for it, because after hearing shots in the distance, they soon came to discover that not only was the Stanleyville airfield being overrun by 320 paratroopers from a literally made-up country, but also on the outskirts of town, some plucky duckies from 5 Commando were doing their best Can-It impression, with US air support to boot. That is to say, the Simbas were in the middle of the open road, on foot, while satanic planes whizzed over their heads. No magic potion's going to help you here, lads. So, naturally, they started shooting the hostages. Though they only managed to pop off a few rounds before the totally real Sky Whites managed to intervene and dispel them. Though they weren't able to save all of those who were shot, with 18 dead and 40 wounded. The sum total of Dragon Rouge was 1,600 foreigners and 150 natives getting evacuated from the city. Despite the operational success, Stanleyville itself was still a quagmire of Simbas, with fighting and barbarity ever present. Kinda like the Four Corners in Glasgow. Despite that, due to the lack of, vigour on the part of the government forces to actually take the city, they received widespread criticism primarily focused at the US and Belgium, primarily due to the prioritisation of whites being evacuated over anyone else. And what of Mike's ferocious flock? Well, they were cleaning up swathes of Stanleyville and fucking pillaging it. Apparently, they had miners with blasting certificates and, of course, dynamite. So they were naturally put to work and they went around the city just blowing shit up. Most notably, a massive monument to Lumumba and every single bank they found. But why are they going around blowing up bank vaults? To see if there are any Simbas hiding inside there, of course. But there were none there, and all of the vaults were completely empty when we got there. As you can guess by now, 5 Commando's antics in the Congo were not all peachy and clean. That is to say, they partook in their fair share of plunder, looting bodies, buildings, and anything that looks like it might be worth some money. They made a habit of stealing munitions and supplies from other merc units and the UN. And they had a penchant for decapitating Simbas and sticking their heads to the sides of their jeeps. Why? Because they look pretty fucking cool, that's why. But mostly because they didn't have the manpower, resources, or logistics to reliably take prisoners. So they used the prisoners' heads to grimdark their vehicles. They would also use the captured Simbas to clear the Simba minefield. Why am I laughing? That's not funny. They would basically take the captured Simbas to the minefields that they had lay there and went, start running, boy. That's not funny. But these were the same guys who did lay the mines, and using mines in warfare is pretty fucked up. So, fuck you for using them. You deserved it. There were a couple of lads in the unit that even Mike himself admitted were bad boys, including one gentleman by the name of Siegfried Mueller, a subordinate of Mike's and a former SS man. So of course he did some fucked up stuff. It goes without saying that doing the odd rape and murder wasn't really good for unit cohesion and morale. There was one case where Mike found out about one particular man having raped and murdered a Congolese girl. Mike did not like that, but he knew that the rest of the lads wouldn't be too happy about this guy getting the NKVD treatment. So, when Mike found out that the offender in question was a professional footballer, he compromised by shooting the man's toes off. Laws of the jungle and all that. 5 Commando wasn't the only mercenary outfit operating in the Congo. In fact, they weren't even the only outfit working for the Congolese government. 5 Commando had a sister unit called, wait for it, 6 Commando. Very creative, and Mike fucking hated them. Why? Because he saw them as barbaric, wearing short shorts and random hats that they found on the ground. He's even quoted to have said that they were swaggering, crapulous, foul-mouthed, and quite unnecessarily armed. I mean, they didn't even try to hide their raping and pillaging. They were that bad that their nickname was literally L'affreux. or the horrible. And worst of all, they were a francophone unit. They were French. What good British officer wouldn't recoil at the sight of them? 6th Commando was led by another famed mercenary and another potential mad lad named Bob Denard, who Mike, as you probably assumed, absolutely fucking hated. There's a whole spiel I could go on about him, but to be honest, this video is already riddled with side tangents, so I'll just say that he is another spicy boy who also did some funky stuff outside of the Congo. Will we cover it? Maybe, but probably not, because this channel is proudly francophobic. Just like God, who speaks English. As a quick contrast, by this point, 5 Commando was a cohesive unit. Frankly, too professional for the shit that they were doing. Mike even made a point to force all of them into Sunday church service. After all, Mike is part of the McTribe. And by God, the men will observe Lent. Anyways, after clearing out the remnants of Stanleyville and a short side quest of rescuing British citizens at the request of the UK ambassador, Mike, most notably, with the assistance of the CIA, got into a scuffle alongside Lake Tanganyika with a group of Simbas during Operation South, most of whom were under the command of Cuban commanders, including one fellow by the name of Che Guevara. Yes, that Che Guevara. The t-shirt guy. And Mike almost got him as well, but the wee prick managed to slither away just in time. To be honest, they didn't really have to fight, as they probably saw eye to eye on quite a few things. Homosexuality being one of them. Also, if you want a right laugh, go and Google Che Guevara's letters from Africa. Woo! That man had some things to say about the locals. By the end of 1965, 5 Commando was in a much better state. Good enough to get a handshake from Mobutu a la Predator. It was at this point that Mike's tenure as commander came to a close, giving command to one of his lieutenants, John Peters. Who is he? Don't care. Let's move on. Before leaving, Mike scrolled down and drilled a list of commandments for the regiment to follow, because he was probably sick of babying the scroats throughout the jungle. They could memorise these and be good boys that didn't do nothing. Unless they were ordered to, of course. And these commandments are as follows. 1. Pray to God daily. 2. Make a fetish of personal cleanliness. Take pride in your appearance, even in the midst of battle. Shave every day without fail. 3. Clean and protect your weapons always. They must be bright, clean, and slightly oiled. Examine your ammunition frequently. Check and clean your magazine springs and lips. 4. Soldiers in pairs, look after each other. Be faithful to your mate. Be loyal to your leaders. 5. Tell no lies in battle. All information must be accurate or your unit will suffer. Exaggerate to your girlfriends later, but never, ever in battle. 6. Be ready to move at a moment's notice. Mark all of your equipment, keep it handy at all times. At night, develop a routine for finding it. 7. Look after your vehicle. Fill it with petrol before resting. Clean it. Do not overload unnecessarily. 8. Take no unnecessary risks. 9. Stand to dawn and dusk. At night, have confidence in your sentries. Post as few as the situation demands. 10. Be aggressive in action, chivalrous in victory, stubborn in defence. 11. Do not goon in the comm channels. Every gooner must be in pairs. Do not goon in the vehicles unless ordered. Whenever you goon, you must respect the chain of command and not come until your superior orders you to. For God's sake, never, ever, ever tell your girlfriends about the goon platoon. The what? The what? I was doing so well, you made me laugh, man. Though one of these tenants is fake. by the way. And no, I'm not going to tell you which one. But this was all very good advice for combat, though admittedly some of these were weirdly specific. With Mike now having left the Congo, we'll just do a quick epilogue for our wacky cast of jungle buddies before continuing with our stories. Yes, I'll try and be as brief as I possibly can, but I can't just blue ball you with the conclusion of the Africa story arc. We'll begin with our guy, Tshombe. After another 2 years of service as PM, he was coup d'etat and replaced by some other guy who doesn't really matter. That same guy was then also couped just a month later by that long-named general guy, Mobutu. With Tshombe out of the picture, the only man in power who liked the mercenaries was gone, and basically 5+6 Commando were forcefully disbanded in April of 1967. Though they did get one last hurrah as some pro-Tshombe forces did plan their own counter-coup against Mobutu. The Mercs crushed them. None of that makes sense and everybody's changed sides, but none of this conflict makes fucking sense. Mobutu then, throughout the early 70s up to the 90s, basically became Black Pinochet, turning the Congo into Zaire, an avowed third positionist and nationalist dictatorship, and because they weren't communist, the US saw that as a win. They patted themselves on the back and went home. I didn't realise that the Congo was eligible to get Operation Condor, but hey-ho, Wakanda forever. Tshombe ended up in Algeria for the remainder of his life. He may have been poisoned by the CIA, but that is crazy. They would never do something like that. But anyway, back to Mike. After leaving the Congo, he probably made more money making Mobutu's mercs mug measly Maoist mystics than making mere motors. However, he differed from the standard merc as he was never in it for the money. He was in it because he loved being a soldier and killing communists. Like a good Christian. As such, he went on to try and find more gigs, including in 1970, when he moved to Singapore and apparently tried to raise 5,000 men to try and destroy some guerrilla group that was called the Khmer Rouge. That didn't end up going anywhere, so big L for Asians that needed glasses. Alongside that, he was doing standard middle-aged man stuff like getting a sailboat and yachting around the Mediterranean with his wife and kids for 3 years. And because podcasts weren't a thing yet, he also wrote a book about this experience, titled 3 Years with Sylvia. No, I'm not reading it because my head is still numb trying to wrap my head around the Congo kerfluffle, and I don't want to read about Mike's presumed family drama on a fucking boat. Right? We're not going from the Congo War to him prancing about the Mediterranean and shagging his wife in a boat. Right? Sorry, not sorry. Read it yourself. Obviously, with all of the press that he got for his African antics and because of how romantic and daring the image of 5 Commando was, it's not surprising that in 1978 a Rhodesian man named Daniel Carney would write a fictionalised novel about Mike and 5 Commando, and the novel was called The Wild Geese. What was surprising was the fact that it was successful enough to be picked up by Hollywood and made into a movie. And it was just fucking ridiculous when Mike himself was brought in to be the technical director. Aye, he actually helped make the movie about himself. Richard Bruton was literally him. And for what it's worth, the film is an absolute banger. And Mike seemingly agreed, as he apparently even went on tour of the United States to promote the film. Shortly after returning from his side hustle, Mike was approached with yet another job. This one was quite simple, really. Just grab 50 guys and topple the government of the Seychelles. Standard story, pro-Western president gets coup d'etat by our man of interest, France Albert René. His name was literally France, so he had to be evil. So of course, Mike accepted, because he was going to be the man to kill France. Also, it seems like easy money. Turns out, it was not easy money, but we'll get into that. Gathering 50 lads was a simple enough job, because Mike had an assistant by the name of Tullio Moneta, who was an Italian actor that he met on the set of Wild Geese, and Mike probably thought he was such a vibe that he decided to bring him along for a picnic and a military coup. Though, alongside that, he had more than enough connections and experience weeding out unsuitables from the outset. He knew his target audience after all. So, after placing adverts in a magazine, he got his manpower. Now, he just needs the weapons. Easy. South Africa. After all, they're the ones bankrolling the operation, even though they do sometimes still kind of deny it to this day, so they were the ones supplying the ordnance. Though this does come with a catch. One, Martin Dolachek was to accompany Mike on this mission. And who was he? Their handler. He was a Sather spook from the NIS, who are basically the South African CIA. And they wanted him to tag along on the mission. You know, just to make things even more messy. As for funding, Mike reckoned that they would need about 5 million. But sadly, Mike didn't realise that the whole point of this coup business was plausible deniability. So he only got about 300,000. But you know what? Fuck it, we ball. The plan was simple enough. 9 boys were sent in to recce the joint and link up with military insiders. It turns out the term for someone from the Seychelles is Seychellois. That's not important, but it's fucking weird, so I'm including that. The remaining 43 fellows would get the signal and land in the international airport in a Swazi-owned Fokker F-28. They would be packing disassembled AK-47s in suitcases with false bottoms. The cover story: rugby team on holiday with bleeding hearts. Those suitcases would be filled with conveniently bulky toys that were totally going to be given out to the local orphanages. The cover name, a high IQ reference to an old drinker society from the 1930s. Ye Ancient Order of Froth Blowers. Okay. So, they had their cover story, they had their weapons, but after they landed, what next? Well, they were going to spread themselves into several hotels around the island and wait until Renee has a planned cabinet meeting, to which then Operation Angela, as it was designated, would begin, with the Mercs seizing the local police station, radio station and military base, from which they would broadcast their allegiance to the regime and move in to arrest Renee with the help of 400 locals. On November 25th, 1981, the plan is put into action. 43 boys are landing in Seychelles International Airport. And as the boys are going through customs, things are going smoothly. Only 2 more need to shimmy on through when calamity struck. They went down the wrong line. They went down the something to declare line. When they had disassembled AKs hidden in their luggage. You know the line where you get searched? They went down that one. How fucking stupid can you be? You're about to take part in a military coup, you're smuggling in disassembled AK-47s, and you chose to go down the line where you get searched. Right? How much varnish does your mother have to drink while pregnant for you to be that fucking stupid? Right, so of course, the AK parts were discovered by the 2 airport security guys. So the 2 airport security guys shit themselves, the 2 mercs shit themselves, and the other 41 mercs also shit themselves. This is a shit show, and it's not even been 5 minutes since they landed. Shit. In a panic, Mike's boys just kind of go, well, I guess the party's starting early, so they start assembling their AK-47s, and they lock the place the fuck down, taking hostages and basically trying to do a payday before it becomes a no Russian. 70 hostages were taken, and the entire island was mobilised, with a 24-hour curfew put into effect, and the entire police and defence force being sent to the airport alongside militias being raised. For the next 6 hours, a gunfight was waged in the airport. The number of mercs present was unknown to law enforcement because they didn't search the luggage thoroughly enough. So, as a result, they assumed the worst and Zerg rushed the place. They managed to get 2 armoured cars onto the runway and gain control of it, confining Mike's boys to the buildings. Of course, the lads retaliated by firebombing one of the cars with a Molotov, but the remaining car then shot up and disabled the plane that they arrived on. So now, they needed a new plane. The mercenaries then went on to seize the airport's control tower, just as Air India Flight 224 was requesting to land because they required refueling. Perfect timing. Despite attempts from the military to block the runway, the plane landed anyway. The Mercs then proceeded to storm the plane and attempt to hijack it, holding the pilot up at gunpoint and ordering him to fly the plane to South Africa. Mike corralled as many of his men as possible and got that plane in the air. Next stop, South Africa. Mike's gambit was rather smart, if not a little bit fucked up, because the plane seizure was twofold. Secure a vehicle to leave in, sure, but also secure some collateral so that the Seychelles military wouldn't just shoot the plane down without killing all of the hostages on board. Now, Mike hadn't planned on any of this happening, of course, nor did he have any intention on harming all 78 civilians that were on board the plane. But at the same time, he did put them in the crossfire, which I obviously disavow. If you're going to get into a gunfight with government agencies, do it away from pedestrians. It probably took Mike a few minutes to realise that he had just Kevin McAllistered 6 of his boys back in the airport. All 6 were quickly apprehended and imprisoned. It was safe to say that Operation Angela was a complete failure. And at the very least, Mike can limp home and lick his wounds. A lucky break for those that managed to scurry back to Durban. Right? Well, in a surprise to absolutely no one, the South African authorities were there to arrest the Mercs. A few months after landing. Why? Well, because South Africa had nothing to do with this attempted coup, don't you know? Please discount our reluctance to arrest the NIS agent that was accompanying the mercenaries flying from South Africa with South African weapons. These were completely independent actors that had nothing to do with us. It was just the boys, you know, lads on tour. Again, plausible or implausible deniability aside, what is interesting is that technically they weren't arrested for the coup, but they were instead arrested for hijacking the plane. As that is a civil offence, a silver lining that was about to be snapped. All of this is to say, South Africa was completely washing their hands of this whole affair, leaving Mike to fend for himself against the totally fair justice system. In July of 1982, Mike was dragged before Justice Neville James and given a sentence of 10 years in prison. James said that Hoare was, and I quote, an unscrupulous man with a highly cavalier attitude to the truth. Probably because Mike went on about things that actually happened that sounded bullshit, which, yeah, that's fair enough to be honest. As for the 6 boys back in the Seychelles, well, they got interviewed outside of the airport immediately after laying down their arms, to which they were then dragged before a court, and 4 of them got the death penalty. It'll be no surprise that one of the 2 who didn't get domed was the spook. So I don't feel quite as bad for Mike, especially when he got released early after only serving 3 years of his sentence and then got fucking amnesty from President Botha. This shows you that friends in high places will get you far, though that's just conjecture on my part, as I don't like politicians and they don't like me. Though in fairness, Mike did at least get some punishment. Remember how he was a chartered accountant? Well, his licence was revoked. A fate worse than death, I know. He mourned this by briefly moving to southwestern France and writing a book on the Cathars. Because every main character must have at least one weird autistic hyperfixation. And before you ask, no, I didn't read it. Right? Mike wrote 7 books, for fuck's sake, and I nearly had an aneurysm trying to wrap my head just around the Congo shite. He, at some point, moved back to Durban and finally published his book on Cathars in 2013. He lived for another 7 years in presumed peace and quiet, but then on February the 2nd, 2020, Mad Mike Hoare passed away from natural causes at the ripe young age of 100. Some of you might be aware that we simplified and omitted quite a few feats from this video. This is because we tried to do the impossible. Simplify the narrative of a complex man. And if there was any word that describes Mike Hoare, it is complex. This is the same man who in one breath is an explorer, a lover of nature, who probably adored the likes of David Attenborough, and then in another breath would casually pop up to kill cracked out tribal Maoists in an ideological crusade against communism while driving a jeep that was decorated with human heads. Such a man can't just be put to paper and recounted without a whole series. I mean, for fuck's sake, you just saw how many side tangents I had to go on to give you the basic context for just one of his character arcs. I wouldn't know if I would call Mike a good man. Though I will say he was a man who held on to his beliefs and acted upon them with conviction. A rarity in this day and age, made even more impressive by just how mad the Congo is. If you want to see this, you only need to search for a video, it's like a documentary, titled Africa Adio. But before you watch that documentary, it is not for the faint of heart, as it really does not sugarcoat all of the horrendous stuff that was going down in Africa during that period. However, there is a dub of it that exists, and like, they also dub in the gun sounds, and like, see hearing like Wild West shooting and bullets going pew pew during footage of an actual execution. Like, I shouldn't be laughing. It's not funny, but I just feel it really adds to the experience. And if this sounds like a eulogy, it's because it sort of is. After all, he only died about 4 years ago, and his son Chris Hoare could very well be watching this video. Speaking of which, Chris Hoare has been an absolute godsend in trying to wrap my brain around his father. He's done interviews, wrote autobiographies, and he even has a YouTube channel which I'll show on the screen just now. If I didn't know any better, he would come off as a Mike Hoare stan a la Christopher Tolkien. Either way, I hope he doesn't get angry at all of the shite I've been talking in this video, because Mad Mike Hoare was definitely the least fucked up mercenary from the Congo. Fly high, wild goose. Hello. I have a comedy show at the end of this month in Birmingham. The one in Britain, like not in the other country that doesn't matter. But anyway, I've got a show 30th of March in Birmingham. I'll put links to buy tickets down below so that you can buy tickets and come along to the show. It's me with Darius Davies and Nico DeSanto, two very, very funny comedians. I mean, they're all right. But yeah, come and see the three of us in Birmingham. I know it's Birmingham. I'm sorry, right? But we finally got a show outside of London with a venue that's actually brave enough to take us. So, like, you know, that's nice. So yes, I'll put the link to buy tickets down below, and then you can come and see me live and realise what an awkward bastard I really am in real life. So yeah, that'll be fun. Buy tickets.
It's Count Dankula on YouTube. Everybody just subscribe.